So one of the things at the beginning of this year, Lightcast did predictions,
Mhm.
and I'm genuinely curious. I have them pulled up if you want me to share my screen. Do you
Just
remember your
hit
prediction?
like the top three ones because I think I made a bunch of predictions. Hit like
You did.
the top
You
few.
did. Okay. This one's coming from, I would say, one of our favorites here, Richard Rosenau. If you could design a course that every IO Psych Master's PhD student would have to take in order to best prepare them for impact in the workforce, what would some of the core pieces of that syllabus look like?
Yeah, I don't know if Richard even knows this, but I'm actually creating a data academy right now. One of the things that you learn that I did not know or learn or believe when I first started it is the concept of like situational leadership, and that you have to approach somebody with who they are and what their needs are rather than just who you are and what you want to do. Welcome to Directionally Correct, a people analytics podcast with Cole and Scott, and today's guest, well, kind of nobody. We're doing an Ask Me Anything session with my colleague, Chayce Kowalski. Hey, Directionally Correct fans. This podcast is dedicated to you to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics, workforce planning, talent intelligence, behavioral science, and understand the impacts of AI in the workplace. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to Directionally Correct Substack newsletter, where you can read Cole's articles or watch the video of the podcast. You can also see video on Spotify or YouTube, or listen to the podcast on your app of choice. Feel free to check out Cole's new book, People Analytics, and everything else that's going on at colenapper.com. As always, all opinions are our own, and thanks for being a listener. Chayce, I appreciate you joining me today. This episode is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be doing an Ask Me Anything episode, or AMA. We've never done one of these before. Probably going to have a completely different feel. Wanted to try things out. I had gotten some advice that trying to make the podcast kind of more interactive with the audience. And so a while back, I posted the question out in LinkedIn, like, hey, does anybody have any questions? Or we're doing an AMA episode. And so frankly, I noodled on those questions for quite some time because I thought I was going to have to record this with me talking to myself, which felt super weird. And so I kind of twisted myself up like a pretzel, thinking like, how am I going to do this? This is going to be super weird. And Chayce, I know you're a coworker of mine and you're an avid listener to the podcast. And I was like talking to you about it, and we're like, well, I could join you. And so I was like, all right, at least we'll be talking to another human being, and I'll have somebody who'll ask me the questions. And so I really appreciate you being willing to join me today. Do you want to say anything at all about like who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, thanks for having me. I'm convinced I ask you more questions at work than anybody else. So it only makes sense for me to be able to chime in and ask you questions from other people too. But Chayce Kowalski, account manager for Lightcast, and been here for about 4 years, and really dove deep into data. And Cole has been a great mentor, great guy to listen to. I actually
Oh, shut
met
up.
him.
Okay, now I'm just cutting you off now.
You're
Because
cutting me off.
you can, okay, keep going, whatever. You're just like buttering me up now.
Well, hey, today's really all about you, man. But met Cole at the Lightcast Coeur d'Alene conference a few years ago, and been listening to Directionally Correct, the podcast, ever since. And so really excited to be here and be a part of this. So thanks for
All
having
right.
me.
Well, thanks for being a good sport and being willing to do this. I'm going to do like a few kind of PSAs before we get into the AMA, just because when this comes out, we won't have released an episode for a few weeks. And so we mentioned it a few times, but we were taking an end of year break. So we took the months of November and December off of the podcast. It'll get kicked off in January. I think this is going to come out sometime in December. So just those of you who are wondering why the podcast hasn't been coming out and why you're not getting episodes, we're just taking a 2-month break. We've never done one of those. We needed it desperately. So yeah, I guess kind of getting burned out, and hopefully we'll come back into the new year quite refreshed. One of the things I also wanted to mention is people always ask me, they're like, why isn't Scott in all the episodes now? And again, like, why is he in this episode? We kind of made an arrangement where we had moved, I guess it was like almost 2 years ago now, where we had moved to doing episodes every other week, just for, frankly, both of us are very busy in our jobs at that time. And with me starting a new job at Lightcast, I was able to move back to weekly doing the podcast, but Scott was not able to. And so he's just joins every other episode now. Just to kind of get behind the scenes a little bit, we stagger these recordings. Sometimes we'll record 2 or 3 in a single week, and sometimes we won't. We won't record for 2 or 3 weeks straight. And so the release schedule ends up, sometimes it'll be like 2 or 3 episodes in a row where Scott's on there, and then there'll be 2 or 3 episodes in a row where he's not on there. So just wanted to call that out, but he's still around. He's just here for every other week. That's the kind of the way that we're doing things. And then just another one, a common question I get is about why we don't talk about our current or prior employers and use more stories from work. Well, frankly, because we don't want to get fired. And so many of the places that actually every place I've worked before Lightcast, I had non-disclosure agreements and could not talk about that. So if we ever mentioned the employer on there, like, I could get fired in my day job. And I think Scott kind of has the same arrangement with his work. And so we do really cool work, just oftentimes we can't talk about it. And so we try to make the podcast really fun and bring on guests who can talk about what they're doing. And we also try not to name people on the podcast because, like, I'm very public persona. I meet people all the time, but I try to do my best, unless they've been a prior guest on the podcast, to not name people, just because I don't want to put people on blast with, like, unnecessarily, because I've accidentally done that a few times in the past, and that was not good for me or the other people. So try not to do that in anything anymore. But with this said, Chayce, I want to turn it over to you. You're going to be doing the asking the questions, the AMA. So at this point, do you want to kind of take it from here and just take me through, and then we'll do a Cole's Corner and just see how this goes today? I feel very hesitant to hand over the reins to someone else, but let's try this out and see how it goes.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So for those that don't know, again, Cole, you put up that LinkedIn post. A lot of the questions that we're going to be covering today came directly from that LinkedIn post. And so I'm going to be calling out who put that comment in there, give them a shout out. That way, hopefully they can listen back to this and then, know that we answered their question. So this one's coming from Colby Kennedy Nesbitt. What's the coolest finding you've discovered or presented?
So this isn't actually answering the question exactly, but I remember earlier in my career, and it's where I made this discovery. I had kind of this epiphany that I'll talk about in a second, where I was literally at dinner with a senior HR leader after we had presented at, like, some offsite that day. And we were just kind of talking conceptually about an idea about what was going on at work. And I literally started drawing a chart on a napkin. I know some people, like, say, we had an idea, we drew it on a napkin at a bar, but this, like, literally happened. Like, I was, like, literally drawing a chart on a napkin about, like, the concept we were talking about. And they were like, oh, that's so amazing. Let's go do that. And, like, we committed the next, like, 9 months of work based on a chart on a napkin. Now, at this point in time, I had been working for this executive for months, doing rigorous data analysis, trying to do everything I could to meet this demand with no success. And drawing on a napkin literally changed the course of things. And so one of the things I always say to analysts as advice is there's literally no correlation between the amount of effort you put into your work and the impact it has. It's not a small correlation. It's no correlation, which means you can do something, at one point in time and for months or even years, and it have zero impact. And you can literally write something on a napkin and it have more impacts than work that took you 6 months to do. And so I'd say, like, that was actually a very eye-opening fact for me. I was not aware of that at the time. Nobody had ever told me that. And so I try to share that pretty often as a cool and interesting finding I discovered, is that there's no correlation. And if you know that, you have to really be judicious about where you put a lot of effort. Because if you put too much effort, it could all go to waste if it has no impact.
Yeah. sometimes those whiteboard scratches are often the best ones. I'm curious, did you draw a diagram on this napkin? Was it some chart that
I
they
can
then
I can
asked?
visualize it now. Again, I'm not trying to put anybody on blast, not trying to violate any
Yeah, yeah.
NDA agreements I had, but I can literally I can visualize the chart in front of me. Like in this, I think it's happened in like 2014, so it was quite some time ago.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Well, hopefully that satisfies Colby and the question they had. But
Well, let's keep going because I think we got a bunch of them. Let's
we do.
let's
We have
wrap
so
it up.
many. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this one is actually this one's coming from me. So one of the things at the beginning of this year, Lightcast did predictions.
Mhm.
And I'm genuinely curious. I have them pulled up if you want me to share my screen. Do you
Just
remember your
hit
prediction?
like the top three ones because I think I made a bunch of predictions. Hit like
You did.
the top
You
few.
did. Okay, I'll read the bolded points here. So, a couple things. A pent up demand of tech exits will lead to many tech IPOs.
There
The
were actually a couple, but not that many.
okay. The crypto reboom will continue.
Yeah, I think there's been some very favorable legislation for the crypto industry, so I would think that was a accurate prediction.
I'd say that was a hit for sure. I can't say I'm one of those diamond hand people, but yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
This one, I thought you nailed spot on. Interest rates should continue to decrease slowly.
Yeah. At the time, I think people were predicting that there would be a rapid drop in interest rates to try to stimulate the economy. That did not happen, and yeah, that prediction has been very accurate.
Yeah, I'm gonna
What did I
make.
fail on? Hit me with the one I most missed on, just to keep my ego
Uh,
in check.
I don't know if you mostly missed on this one. I think this one's just maybe this one's top of mind because of where AI is falling. But the Gen AI
Hmm.
boom will not turn to bust, but the cost of consumption of AI will begin to be passed to the consumer.
Yeah, I think I was right and wrong because for a hot second there, OpenAI was started to charge like $20,000 for the most, what they call them, like the models that are the most advanced. They have a name for it. I can't. It's escaping me right now. But I think that actually went away after they
Hmm.
started releasing GPT-5. So they were starting to pass along the cost to the customer, but I think largely that was probably a miss because I don't think that has happened yet. I still think it's probably going to have to happen. And the interesting thing is, it may not be on the consumer side, but I imagine it'll be on the data side. Like with data centers, we'll start having to pass the cost of energy on to the AI companies, and then the AI companies will likely be forced to pass that on to customers. But I think that's yet to be seen. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm going to be really interested to see how AI tries to become profitable. That's something definitely worth monitoring in the future, I think.
yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
next one here. Um, this one actually, I think this is. Let's see. Here we go.
Well, like I think this is one I just wanted to put on here. This I guess I missed this in the PSA section. Um, and so two more PSAs really quick. One is nobody ever asked me this. I don't know why. I think they just assume they know why. But what it's like being different, working at a vendor like at Lycast, being internal like I was at like FedEx, Texas Instruments, PepsiCo, like all these other places I used to work, versus being independent, i.e., via the podcast and the newsletter. I think people see me as like a singular human, and they don't realize that there's actually three different contexts that are going on depending on where I've been and what I've been doing. Uh, and the reality is there's pros and cons to each, right? I'll start with the podcast just because people hear me on this. But when you work somewhere and you have a big voice, and I think about mostly my prior employers here, I think Lycast has been very supportive, but they don't necessarily like that. And so if you say with a big megaphone something that they don't want to hear, that puts you in a lot of risky positions with your job. And so I'd say they're like going independent and doing more stuff on the side has been incredibly rewarding, but it's also incredibly risky. So I get a lot of people ask me like, "Oh, I just want to do what you do," and I'm like, "Yeah, but do you realize the type of risk that you're taking on by doing that?" And so I don't think a lot of people realize that. I'd say being internally, an internal role like that. If you really want to make an impact, be in an internal role. You get to actually do the things, make the impact. The hardest part, honestly, is just dealing with the internal politics and shenanigans of being in a big company. Like it's just really difficult. And I think it's been especially challenging in the last few years because of all the layoffs and things like that. Is you have to deal with like a lot of unpalatable situations. So there are pros and cons of being internal. Being on the vendor side is really interesting and cool. The only challenge there is a lot of people just assume you're a salesperson all of a sudden. Like it'll be like even my friends, and they're like, "Yeah, you're a salesperson now." I'm like, "No, I'm not." But and frankly, at another vendor I used to work for, I had to do some more like BDR type of things, which I did not like and I didn't enjoy, and I think it did hurt some of my relationships. But I don't have to do that in my current role, so yeah, being on the vendor side has a lot of pros, and I think especially if you've worked for the right kind of vendor. And so yeah, just I thought that would be a neat one to talk about today. I also say like a question I get is like people just say, "Hey, why don't you go get so and so to be a guest on the podcast?" Do you think that there's like some like magical solution to just get people to show up to these podcasts? Like, I don't think people realize, especially when we first started, not as much now, but we dealt with, and I say we, I mean me, because like Scott really wasn't reaching out to guests. Like, I dealt with so much rejection, like a soul crushing amount of rejection. Now, more people actually like offer themselves up to be on the podcast now. It's fairly popular. But even then, I still have to be somewhat choosy in terms of the guests we bring on because frankly a lot of people think they're interesting and they're not. I hate to say it that way, but they think that they have something to say, or frankly they have something to say that I don't necessarily agree with, so I'm not going to necessarily bring them on the podcast. But another thing is a lot of people make recommendations for people who actually work at vendors, and the reality is this podcast works off of sponsorships, and if the companies that they work for don't want to sponsor them, there's so many people that work at vendors that I want to talk to, that I want to have as a guest. I just think they're interesting, but just on principle, I can't bring them on unless they're company sponsors. And so I just wanted to call that out as like another PSA. But I still get ghosted all the time, and it is a very humbling experience. And so if everybody just sees like the bright veneer of the podcast, I think sometimes they forget that, yeah, it's actually hard to make this thing go around. But with that said, I want to turn it back over to you, Chayce, getting past all these PSAs.
Yeah, that's fair. I can't imagine why you haven't, interviewed some CEOs on here like Mark Zuckerberg or something like that. I'm sure he'd just
Well,
hop
I'm not
in.
even trying to get them like,
That's fair. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like, and
Obviously,
frankly,
people
because
analytics space.
why would I talk to them about with people analytics? Like what are we gonna talk about?
Yeah, Mark, why'd you pay someone $250 million? Like, where'd you get that? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Um,
Okay,
anyway,
well, yeah, let's get back over. So these questions here, a little bit more personal. So this one's coming from, I would say, one of our favorites here, Richard Rosenau. If you could design a course that every IO Psych master's PhD student would have to take in order to best prepare them for impact in the workforce, what would some of the core pieces of that syllabus look like?
yeah, I don't know if Richard even knows this, but I'm actually creating a data academy right now. So I would
I didn't
say
know that.
I'm working with Alexis Fink, who's going to be leading the strategy section, Gina Tabus, who's going to be leading the leadership section, and Sonali
Mm,
Kumar, who's going to be leading kind of the analyst section. Um, and so I would say I would split the curriculum into three areas: strategy, leadership, and like analytics. And what undergirds it all is going to be kind of loosely based on my book
mhm,
about how to do people analytics today versus how to do it with generative AI. And frankly, not just people analytics, but more broadly into all of data driven HR. So an HR person could come and take the course, even if they have no knowledge of people analytics. So we're actually building that, probably launching in early 2026. So
mm.
that's what I would do. I don't know, Richard, if you knew that, but yeah, that's what we are working on right now.
Yeah. When you say leadership on that, is that leadership management, like managing up, or is that
Yeah,
managing people in leadership?
it's going to try to be dual fold. So if you're an individual contributor and you're looking to become a manager someday, here what are the skills that
Mm,
you need to do that, and then what are those skills that are unique to people analytics, that not just broad management, but also if you currently are a leader, here's how to make an impact with people analytics and run a people analytics shop effectively, and just how to become a better leader more generally, because everybody could always stand to improve. But the reality of this is, and why I chose those people, all three of those people have been recent guests on the podcast. And so people can go back and listen to those episodes. I think we kind of tease it in those episodes that that's coming.
Mm.
But yeah, they're all fantastic leaders in their own right. And so I thought it would be really cool. And Sonali in particular wanted to bring on because she's still doing the work, right? So like, here's somebody who does this job every day. What skills do you need to do this job effectively?
That sounds awesome. But yeah, keep me posted on that. I will happily sign up for that one. All right, this next one. I apologize if I butcher your last name here. I actually tried to Google how to say this phonetically, so I apologize uh, twice now. But Stephen Dixayer says, "What key topics or principles typically covered in an IO Psych degree would you recommend people analytics practitioners who don't have that background learn about?"
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the O side stuff for the IO people out there because I think people analytics teaches you a lot of I side type of techniques already. And so I would say anything related to kind of like the leadership, motivation, the softer skills side of things, I think a lot of people analytics folks could stand to learn. And frankly, I think it's what holds them back. They relentlessly pursue building technical skills to the detriment of their soft skills, and therefore they lose those influence characteristics. And frankly, if you're analyzing human beings, you need to know a little bit about the 6 inches between a human being's ears to understand
Mm.
and like them more effectively. They're not just cogs in a system; that they have complex emotions. As emotions, like their instincts, the things that drive them, may actually lead to I would say discorrelated outcomes that you might not expect. And so you have to understand the human being as a whole and kind of just that premise of the psychology of a human being and the sociology too. Yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to dive deeper into this, but with the way that AI enhances and enriches the technical skills and kind of reduces the ceiling, or at least the entry level that you have to get into, I think those soft skills are becoming so much more important in the day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've done some research on that too, but yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. All right, next question. Christopher Peterson wants to know, what is your biggest survivable mistake as defined by you? And there's some more in there that he wants, but I think that's the gist of the question.
Yeah, they want me to open up on this one, and I guess I should.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say the biggest survivable mistake, um, and many people. I don't have this problem as much anymore because I think I've just become a more well-adjusted human being. But man, earlier in my career, I was a pill to deal with. Just and I really struggled to get along with leaders. I would say the biggest survivable mistake I made is I went into management too early. I was not ready to be a manager. I was not well adjusted enough to be a manager. And I went in my first management job. I was a fail, like I was a great manager as an analyst because I was essentially continuing to be an individual contributor, and I was a very terrible boss to work for. And I would say as proof that I'm still in this field, have survived that mistake. But I definitely had ambitions and aspirations to move up quickly in the world, and I was not ready, I think, emotionally to be a leader. And yeah, I apologize to people who were on my team then because I was pretty atrocious. But I think I've gotten a lot better over time. Still not as good as I'd like to be. But I don't even think I had the self awareness at the time to know how bad I was. And yeah, I'd say that was definitely a mistake.
Yeah. Do you think that would have been solved through mentorship, or do you think there that was just kind of a learning curve you had to go through that journey to get that knowledge?
No, I think it's, and I've done a ton of again mentorship over the years to other people because whenever I meet like a really high need for achievement person, like I was and still am, frankly, and I see them and they say, "Man, I want to move up in the world. And I want to move up fast." I say, "Okay, why do you want to get into leadership in particular?" And if it's just for the pursuit of like more power or having more seniority, I say that's the wrong reason. The
Mm.
right reason is because you want to help other human beings improve in their life and in their job. That's the right reason to be a leader. And if that doesn't factor into the equation, you will be a bad boss. I'm sure there's tons of research that could say one way or another, like this is a leadership style, that's a leadership style. Don't care to get into all of that. If your heart's not in the right place, you're probably going to be a bad leader. And I don't think my heart was in the right place. And I've met plenty of other people over time who their heart necessarily wasn't in the right place. And so then, yeah, you struggle. And frankly, the people who suffer aren't you, it's the people who are on your team. And that's what makes it even worse.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, but for the sake of time, I think we can move on here. This one's
I mean,
coming
what do you
from.
want to go, Chayce? You're in the driver's seat today.
Well, you know, I've, mm,
Come
I
on,
will
man.
keep. Come on,
Hit
okay,
me with it. Chayce is going to
yeah,
tell everybody I'm a jerk to him. So that's fine.
yeah, total jerk. No, what I will say is, I think it's fair to say you've been a bit of a mentor to me, and you are very direct, which I've appreciated. I think people need to be more direct in the feedback and in the vision that they cast for people, especially from the top down. But how do you breathe that life into somebody? Like without crushing their hopes and dreams. Because I think, to
Well,
your point, there's a lot of people that want to take the easy way to get into leadership. Ultimately, there really isn't a good way to take the easy way into leadership. You got to put in the groundwork.
yeah, breaking into leadership is a challenge. It's like one of the biggest hurdles to get over in your career. I would
Mhm.
say, in terms of being direct with you, one of the things that you learn that I did not know or learn or believe when I first started it is the concept of like situational leadership, and that you have to approach somebody with who they are and what their needs are rather than just who you are and what you want to do. And I know you can take it, frankly. Like, I know you actually thrive off getting really, really bluntly direct feedback. Most
Yeah,
people do not. I'm probably still more blunt to them than they would like, but I massively tone it down and try to meet people where they're at, depending on who they are. Right.
yeah,
Again, not perfect, but I would say I know you actually need that. And that's why I provide it to you.
yeah. Yeah, well, it is appreciated, but I think that's good. Talking about survivable mistakes. Um, hopefully Christopher is happy with that answer, but I think that's pretty insightful. This question here, this one's from Steve Dibble, and this one's a long one, so bear with me. I'm going to try and truncate this down, but in a couple of your recent Directionally Correct episodes, you hinted at an introspective journey regarding mission or purpose. In the emerging age of I feel that mindful, intentional purpose will be so important. Certainly, not all of your introspection might not be appropriate for public podcast, but parts, maybe the parts that are especially applicable for people analytics, you could have your favorite LLM interview yourself. So, Cole, why did you
He was
not
trying to take
want?
your job, Chase. He wanted an
Yeah, I was going to
LLM
say,
interview.
why did you not just lean into your favorite LLM to have you do this Ask Me Anything podcast
I
or
don't know. I like
episode?
human beings more than I like AI. That's it. It's like I'd rather
Well,
talk to you or a human than I would to an AI. Actually talked to AI a few times, and I've used some examples on the podcast before where it has been helpful, especially with writing the book.
mhm,
Um, but I would say, just to kind of that introspective journey he was talking about. Frankly, I think, and Scott would probably agree with this. I think at times, and frankly, earlier this year, middle of the year, I was getting
mhm,
really burned out on this thing. There's a reason we're taking an end of year break. We're almost 4 years into it and had taken zero extended breaks from the podcast. And I think we just needed it. And the other thing is, I think that at the time, there was a lot of discussion is like, is AI going to take all of our jobs? Is it going to take everything that People Analytics does? Do you kind of lose some of the mission creep of like, why are you even doing the podcast? And so I
mhm,
just think we needed a hot second to kind of rediscover. Frankly, I think I've just kind of broadened my interest. And so one of the things that I've done recently is change the intro to saying it's just a people analytics podcast to say it's about people analytics, talent intelligence, workforce planning, behavioral science, and the future of work with AI at its core. The reason why is wanted to give myself more breath to talk to more people about more interesting things because frankly, I just have a variety of interest and I felt like, and I think Scott would agree with this too, we felt like we were just kind of talking to the same people, having the same conversation over and over again trying to kind of breathe some life into it and just giving us a little bit more breath. So I would say that that's probably the answer. I don't think LLMs like necessarily like demotivate me or anything like that, but I do at times want to talk about more than just AI.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, as we were preparing for this, I thought about asking you some more AI questions, but honestly, it's like it's becoming a taboo in my vocabulary talking about AI. Every time I'm reading these questions about AI, I'm like, it hurts.
It's not just a taboo, it's boring. It's like people are all worried about I call
Yeah.
them like overpopulation on Mars issues. We haven't even landed on Mars yet, and you're already worried about overpopulating it. We haven't even gotten to AGI yet, and we're all worried about what this post AGI world looks like. I'm like, we may never get there. Like you guys are
Yeah.
just worried about stuff that has not happened.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. All right, next question. This one is from Andrew Pitts. He's got a few in here, but we'll start with this one. If you could live in any non-U.S. city in the world, where would it be and why?
Probably just because I don't speak any other languages. I might say London, just because
That's fair.
I got to go somewhere where they're native English speakers. And London's a pretty cool city. I liked
Yeah.
Amsterdam when I was there. That's a pretty cool place as well. But I'd probably just say London, just make it easy. I know
Okay.
Andrew's in Australia. So Andrew's previous guest on the podcast. So was Richard. Um, he probably, I haven't been to Australia. I bet you dispositionally, I would love it there, but I just haven't been. So I can't say one way or another.
You caught me at an awkward time drinking coffee, but I think that's fair. If language wasn't a barrier, would you say somewhere more exotic?
I don't know, man. I remember earlier in my career, one of the things people find surprising about me is I'm like in Hogan terms, I have like such a low hedonism score, meaning means you just don't pursue things for the fun of it. You just enjoy doing things to do them.
Mm-hmm.
And um, one of the things that I don't actually go on a lot of vacations, like at all. And
Mm-hmm.
so I travel for work, or I used to move around cities so many times just for jobs that people say Cole doesn't go on vacations. He just moves to a new city until he gets used to it, and then he moves to a new city. I'm not moving anymore, but so I'd say there's a few places I would just consider like from a livability standpoint is like really high on my factors. And so it's not necessarily like a tourist destination. You know, I want a place that like I can live and just like there's like a little pizza place right around the corner. And if I had to commute for work, the commute's not too long and the cost of
Yeah.
living is reasonable. All of these are not like good answers that people find attractive, but that's really like the stuff I care about is just like livability.
Yeah. Yeah. How long have you lived where you are now?
So I've lived in the Dallas Fort Worth area since 2018. I've moved a couple of times since being
Okay.
here, and I've lived in Dallas before that at different points in my career as well. But yeah, since 2018.
Yeah. Oh, very nice. Yeah, you got the kid. It's hard to move with the family. That's one thing I'm
Yeah.
learning as we're growing ours. We're going to move into some more professional questions here, and we have some questions that fell into this category from Andrew as well. So, what is the one thing that has surprised you since joining Lightcast?
Um. So Andrew Pitts again, and go
Yeah,
ahead and hit the second question he asked too, so I can answer them both at once. Since he asked like three in a row.
that's totally fair point. So, yeah, what do you like and dislike? I'm going to say that slash is an and. So, what do you like and
Yeah.
dislike about the vendor side versus the practitioner side?
Yeah, I guess I kind of covered this in the PSA earlier. What since I joined like us, one thing that surprised me and what I liked about the vendor side versus practitioner side. The thing that surprised me, so most people don't realize that we by the time this one has come out, Kara, Christopher, so Lycast actually sponsored the podcast for an HR Tech Voices series, and that episode will be out by the time this one comes out. But we talk a little bit. I sit in marketing of all places, even though I'm the VP of research, which is really interesting and new. I've never done that before. And so Kara actually described this really well. That she said, she's a marketing person who's trying to learn about the HR space, and I'm an HR person trying to learn about the marketing space. And so we complement each other well. And so I'd say that has been surprising just because I've learned a lot. Like I'm usually the odd man out in most meetings that I'm in with marketing team because like and Cole's here to talk about the weird research stuff that he's doing. So that is interesting. I'd say what do I like and dislike about the vendor versus practitioner side? I think I kind of covered this earlier, but the vendor side, I do travel a lot more. That is good and bad. Like if it's travel where I want to go, it's good. If it's travel where I don't want to go, it's a little bit bad. I'd say the practitioner side. Um, yeah, I think the things that I guess I'd just say more generally, and I think people could probably understand this from the undertone of the podcast at times, and some of the other podcasts I've been a guest on,
Hmm.
is I'm just kind of tired of the same old HR problems, right? And it's not that I'm tired of the problems because I really enjoy solving problems. I'm tired of the same old HR pushback, and HR just doesn't get data and analytics yet. I'm just kind of over it, right?
Hmm.
And so I wrote a book on how to overcome a lot of those things. I've done it. It feels like countless times now, but in my mind, it's time for HR to just evolve. Like I'm kind of like I'm tired of having the same old discussions. I'm tired of them not having the appropriate skill sets or the appropriate vision, or frankly understanding how how HR brings the value of human capital to the business, even if you're the CHRO of a company. Like I'm just kind of over that. And so
Hmm.
I would say that's probably the part I dislike about the practitioner side. But obviously, like I said earlier, the part that's so enjoyable is really twofold. It's getting to do your life's work, like getting to do people analytics. I feel like that's just kind of my life's work. And getting to do it internally, you really get to see it and make an impact. And then also being on the leadership side, you get to impact other people's lives and see them grow and mature. That's also been incredibly valuable. So really like that. So I guess I feel like that's a pretty fair and balanced answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. Um, this one may be along the same lines of that travel piece, but this question's for me. There's so many conferences that happen every single year, whether it's the likes of an HR Tech or the Gartner conference that just happened or PsyOp. But which conferences were actually enjoyable to attend?
I'm actually people aren't going to believe this, but I've been one of the things I've been struggling with. I've talked a little bit about it on the podcast, but I've actually been struggling more with like social anxiety lately. I
Mm,
know that
really?
might sound surprising because like I have to interact with folks so often, but it's made conferences, even the ones I like, a little bit harder to deal with,
Mm,
frankly, just because there is comfort in being unknown. Like people don't realize it. So once you become a little bit more known, I don't think I'm like the most known person on earth, but at certain conferences, especially the ones I used to like the most, those are also the ones I'm most known at, which means I have the least chance to just blend into the background and be myself and just go out and enjoy the conference. So I'm in this weird crux where the big conferences where I'm completely unknown are also usually the ones I like the least, but the ones that are smaller that are most appropriate to like me, like the PsyOps, the people analytics worlds, the workforce planning type conferences, the ones that I like the most, I'm actually the most known there. So I can't just like
mm,
go and just like have a good time at the conference like I used to. But I would say definitely anything with PsyOp in it is usually kind of my top ones. People Analytics World has been good lately. Um, I'm probably missing others, but Talreos is fantastic. That's a
mm.
really good one. Red Thread had a really good conference this year. Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably forgetting some. Sorry, I don't have all my lists because I feel like I've been so many
Yeah.
cities this year. It just feel like you forget things. But yeah, I would say those
Yeah.
are some of my top ones.
All right. Follow up question to that, since it was mine. How do you define a good conference?
Well, you usually can't have like usually both of these are struggling, and that's frankly why I put together the SIP Leading Edge Consortium to try to counteract one of these, which is I either want to learn something or I want to get a chance to like with a small group or one on one get to really hang out with somebody who I know or meet a new really cool person. So it's like networking, but not like the traditional version of networking where you just meet as many people as you possibly can, like establishing a real deep authentic connection and relationship with another human being, or
Mhm.
learning something really meaningful that you can apply in the workplace. Both of those are actually a struggle to do for me nowadays,
Yeah.
but I would say that's what I really look for in a good conference.
Yeah. That's good to know. I'll be on the lookout for those as I get sent, hopefully, more myself. Moving on to some other questions here. This one is from Dan
Is
George.
this
This
the
is going to
fun
be
section? This is the
this is
fun
the fun
section.
section. So if Scotty got the chance to replace you with another co-host, who do you think he'd pick and why?
I think that I know the answer to this exactly. I'm surprised I haven't done it already. I would say it would be Tillman Sheets is probably his number one. Mike Knott would probably be his number two. There's a few other names. Again, I try not to name people on the podcast. Tillman and Mike have both been guests, so I don't feel bad naming them. But a few other guys that kind of are in that bandit group of people that I would lovingly call myself a member of. I think he would definitely choose those to replace me in a heartbeat.
That's fair. Um, well, we'll see what happens. Who knows? You might get bumped. Um,
I might.
you might. If you could, oh, this one is sorry. This is from Becca Anderson. If you could be a professional at any sport, what sport would you choose and why? I have a feeling I know the answer to this one, but we'll see.
Well, what do you think the answer is?
I think the answer is golf
Yeah.
because when I asked you about that and you told me your handicap, you and I will never be golfing together.
Is it because you're so good or so bad?
No, 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 no. I'm so bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really bad, really bad.
Well, my golf game is definitely atrophied this year. I would say, like, in terms of, well, let's go back to kind of the quality of life standpoint to this. I actually think
Yeah.
golfers have a pretty bad quality of life. If you like actually kind of get behind the scenes about like how much they have to travel to all these places and how they're always playing and all that kind of
Mm,
stuff. I think I would like golf for like a month, but I'd probably get tired of it. I think I would probably whatever sport has like the most um I don't know, maybe football because they have the least number of games per season. So, like, if you're
mm,
an NBA player, I think they have like over 100 games a year if you make it in the playoffs. Like, that's entirely too many games. I don't know how many tournaments tennis players play in, but I imagine
mm.
they're playing like 24/7. I think it'd probably be football just because there's like a beginning and end of the season, a reasonable number of games, and it's probably really hard on the body, but at least you know that there's off season. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting if there's any professional football players that watch this, or former professional football players that watch this. Let us know your take on Cole's opinion on the off season, because
I highly doubt they're watching. And now we have had some guests on that
hey,
do like
you never know.
assessment work with the NFL. So
Yeah,
like Gina herself works for the Arizona Cardinals, and then we had Charles Sherbaum and
yeah,
his name is escaping me, Harold Goldstein, who do the assessment for the NFL Combine, and I might
yeah,
do some more stuff with future NFL type things. So there
yeah,
are people adjacent to the NFL that are on here, but no NFL players probably that listen.
yeah, yeah. That's fair. Well, I would say bold statement to think that the off season you get any rest. I know
I don't
a
know.
few players. I think it'd be hard pressed to find any rest there. But hey, I respect the opinion. That's that. More power to you.
I mean, I don't
This
think there's
question.
rest in any professional sport. That's why you're a professional.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's just I was trying to think about it like in terms of how I think about life more normally.
yeah, that's fair. This question is also from Becca Anderson. If you could be the one who invented something, what would you have wanted to invent?
Hmm. It's a good question. Maybe like a recliner. That would be a cool thing to invent. Do like
Not
a
one of
I
those.
like a good recliner. You
Yeah,
know.
like
Yeah.
a lazy boy Chase Lounge. Like what are you thinking?
I mean, like any kind. I think I'm
Okay.
as long as it's comfortable.
Okay.
Cole Napper,
Well,
the inventor of the recliner. I think that'd be a good thing on your gravestone.
that's there you go. That's what marketing's done to you right there.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah. This next question, also from Dan George. Wave a wand, rub a genie's lamp. What is one thing you'd wish all HR professionals would have the ability to achieve? Skill or ability to achieve?
That was kind of my answer earlier about being tired of some of the HR stuff. Um, like if you looked at a list from 10 years ago and you looked at a list from this year outside of AI stuff, if you put like the top five challenges of a people analytics team, it's always like building capability and data for the HR function. It's always in the top 5. I would say fix that. If I had one wish and I could rub a genie's lamp, I would say fix that, and it would be so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. The data side seems to be it's an uphill battle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Next question, Yuan Sun says, I love this question so much.
It's Yu Yan. Sorry, I think you wrote that
You,
wrong.
I did. I'm
Yu.
so sorry.
Yeah, you left out a Y.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yuan
She's
Sun.
been a guest on the podcast, so I know she's coming in here, coming in guns ablaze and asking me tough questions.
Fair enough. I should have copy and pasted these names rather than trying to type them
Yeah.
out. My apologies. Okay, would you survive a zombie apocalypse if the zombies were just people trying to talk to you about your emotional baggage?
So the backstory here is Yu Yan came on the podcast, and we had, I would call, one of the most sentimental discussions about her growing up in rural China, moving to the U.S. Very kind of meaningful podcast, frankly. And we had conversations since then about how I would never do that, like actually like open up that much. And so she recently had me on her amazing lives, kind of LinkedIn live, and forced me to talk about a bunch of stuff I didn't want to talk about. And so that's what she's getting here with like my emotional baggage. If people force me to talk to her about it, well, Yuyan, I joined your podcast, so you're welcome. There you go. That's my answer.
Is that the equivalent? Was her podcast the equivalent of a zombie apocalypse? Is that the?
No, she's just trying to be funny.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Okay, this question is from Catherine Brecken. Who is the directionally correct guest that has wowed you the most in terms of their analytics experiences, and who for their non-people analytics experiences?
So their analytics experiences. I mean, I'll say recently, Ludic Stellic, that guy is just a he's just brilliant. And I finally got to kind of nerd out with somebody about like deep technical subjects, but I can't even hold a candle to that guy. There was a point in time where I was really, really trying to be a world-class technical expert. And that's kind of running on fumes now because I just don't keep up as much as I used to. But Ludic is just amazing. So I'd say him for their non-people analytics experiences. I just always think about like the people who I admire who were able to make influence and impact. And so I think like Alexis Fink, she's talked multiple times on the podcast about the work that she's done at Meta and Microsoft and Intel. I'd say Amit Mohindra, the episode way back where he talked about power. That was a transformative episode for both me and Scott. RJ Milner, I think he has probably the most executive presence of any. I think he's a chief people officer now. He was a people analytics leader, and he's like one of the few people I think could actually make the transition from people analytics leader to chief people officer successfully. And I think that I would say somebody like him. I'd say Prasad Sethi, founded the Google team. Clearly, just an incredibly emotionally intelligent leader. I'm probably forgetting others, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, yeah, I really liked. I've listened to all the sessions with Alexis, and they are incredible. Love those.
Yeah,
So
she's amazing.
yeah, sweet. Well, I think this gets us to
Oh,
Cole's
are we
Corner.
ready for Cole's Corner?
Yeah, it's weird that I
Okay.
get to bring that up.
Yeah. Well, let's call it Chayce's Corner today.
Okay,
Chayce's
Chase.
Corner.
All right.
Welcome to Cole's Corner.
Sure. We can
You
do
take
that.
me through these. How about that?
All right. Happily. So one of the things, little backstory, just going to give a minor bit of context to this question. So when I was in college, I had a roommate who decided to major in philosophy, and my roommate, there's three of us. My other roommate and I kept antagonizing him, saying, "How are you going to get a job with a philosophy degree?" Insert AI here. Do philosophy majors find themselves in a key place in the future of ethical AI use?
Yeah, I think your emphasis is on the ethical part of that.
Yep.
So I'd say absolutely. In terms of the broad scale adoption of AI, if we're leaving the ethical word out, probably not at all, frankly.
Mm,
Um, but that said, if I went into like you like went through my phone, you went through like my personal podcast listening habits, I think you would find an insignificant minority or a significant minority of the things I listen to is actually like philosophy or philosophy adjacent.
really?
Um, so yeah, I think it definitely has a role in trying to understand kind of the human mind and how we interact in the world and how to live an ethical life and all of those types of things. Does that play a role in AI? I think it plays more of a role in terms of how AI is constructed than it does in terms of necessarily how AI is used, because how it's
Mm,
constructed is frankly going to guide how it's used. And so I think
yeah.
you would have to go upstream in terms of how philosophy majors could have an impact on its use. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. I think when I'm thinking about, how AI is intended to put out answers, right? Um, like, is it ethical for it to consume someone else's artwork and be able to replicate that? Like, or music for that matter. There's so many. Like, I go on YouTube now, and seemingly all of these playlists that are coming out are AI generated in some way, shape, or form. And it makes me wonder, like, is there laws or ethical standpoint? Like, where do you find that line of, well, this was AI generated, so I just don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it all works out, I think.
Well, I don't know either, Chase. So let's move on.
That's fair. All right. Um,
Hmm.
this one a little bit similar to one we asked earlier, but what's the place you've never been that you'd most like to go, and why?
It's probably New Zealand. I always kind
New
of wanted to
Zealand.
do, and I know my wife is very into the Lord of the Rings too, so I think she would be down as well. But probably New Zealand, maybe Tokyo. I think both of those would be really cool places I've never been. I'd like to go. So yeah, I do the like the Hobbit tour or whatever they call it in New Zealand. They're just
Yeah,
beautiful settings and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's what I would say.
that's fair. That's fair. New Zealand. My
And do
my
like the
brother.
Game of Thrones tour in I think it's like Romania or something like that. That would be cool too.
I feel like if you go to New Zealand, you kind of just got to hit up that whole side, man. You have to hit up Australia after then because you're flying so far. That's the challenge I had with New Zealand.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. There's nothing there that's going to kill you. There's no snakes. My wife found that out and she said we have to move there. It's like, no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I was like, I'll see you guys later.
Yeah. This one actually came from Colby Kennedy Nesbitt as well. Why do you do what you do?
So Kennedy Colby was wise. She knew that this was a typical Coldest Corner question, so she asked it.
Yeah.
So why do I do what I do? Well, it's actually kind of changing. So funny enough, I don't really do people analytics anymore. I know that sounds weird to say. I'm more of along like akin to like a labor economist in my day job in terms of
Mm,
how we look at data, how we analyze it, the type of research we do, a lot of things I get to talk about on the conference circuit. So if I'm not talking about my book, which is explicitly about people analytics, most of the time I'm talking more about like economics, labor economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics. Um, I find that stuff fascinating. So why am I doing it now? I've jokingly been saying I'm kind of tired of hearing about people's feelings. So I've been spent like an entire graduate school plus 15 years into a career doing research about like how do people feel
mm,
and what are their feelings and how they impact the workplace. And I kind of got burned out on that. So the great thing about economics is it still talks about human beings, but it doesn't talk about them in terms of like again the 6 inches between their ears. And I just need a little break from that. So I think that's I love researching human beings. I find them infinitely fascinating, but I'm just kind of looking at the same problem through a new lens. And yeah, I'd say that's why I do what I do.
that's a good answer. People are unpredictable, at least in my opinion. But yeah, that's what makes them fun.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. What happens to the podcast in the future? Does it keep going or fizzle out?
Yeah, I think we said this on the 150th the other day. Again, you haven't seen it, Chase, because that hadn't come out yet, but I have because I was there. Um, we talked about the Lindy effect. And so the Lindy effect is however long something has been going is most likely how long it's going to go into the future. So at the time we were on our 150th episode, so we said, maybe it'll go 150 more, maybe 300 is our number. I would say in terms of whether it keeps going or fizzles out, I think it's more along the lines of whether we keep finding passion in this space, whether there's always another person to talk to you. I will say this: um, whenever I had this strange experience where, like, again, especially earlier this year, I was kind of getting burned out on doing it every week. But simultaneously, I would have a conversation with somebody and I'd be like, man, I really want to talk to them on the podcast. And I think if that feeling of, man, I really want to talk to them on the podcast ever goes away, that's what will be when we stop. Right. Because as much as I love the audience, as much as I love that it's pretty popular, as much as I love the newsletter, if I no longer receive joy from this, I don't make enough money off of this to make this worth it.
Yeah.
And so it's more a labor of love, not a labor of making money, even though it makes a tad bit. So I'd say, yeah, it's just going to be whenever that feeling goes away. And if it never goes away, the podcast will just continue forever.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You gotta do it for the enjoyment, right? This is that extracurricular, so that makes
Well,
sense.
it's like the extracurricular that kind of turned into my life, which is
Really.
weird. Well, because like here's an interesting point, and again, I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast, but like if this podcast didn't exist, I definitely wouldn't be at Lightcast right now. And it's not like I wouldn't like Lightcast. It was Lightcast would not have liked me or known who I was. Like if I didn't
Hmm.
have the podcast, I wouldn't have been Quarter Lane when you and I met. Right? Like that was
Yeah.
like the reason. Like a lot of the like in terms of thinking it's like this big like explosion of a decision tree of like the possibilities of my life.
Hmm.
A lot of the branches of that tree that have been like happenstance things that have come up are the root cause of it was this podcast or the newsletter or both. And now, frankly, the book is kind of opening up new territories there too. But again, the book wouldn't have happened without the podcast. I mean, like we could go to kind of the etymology of the book. The book happened because I was co-chairing the People Analytics World Conference. The People Analytics World Conference happened because I had hosted the People Analytics World podcast. The People Analytics World podcast happened because they had seen me doing this podcast. All right.
Yeah.
And so, like, most of the things, if you look at kind of the trail of breadcrumbs that led from what happened to that, it was just starting this podcast and frankly keeping going with it. And so that is another thing that kind of factors in my mind about whether it fizzles out or not is like it opens up a lot of opportunities. Will those opportunities cease to exist if the podcast cease to exist? But I've kind of come to terms with that of like, if I fall out of love with it, it would be fine to kind of quit it, even if those opportunities cease to come up.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if you've actually talked about this on any of the episodes I've watched, but do you remember why you started the podcast? And has it
Yeah, we, we,
transformed
we've
over
talked
time?
about it before.
Yeah.
I mean, this is I always give Scott like a lot of credit in this space. Like he reached out about it. Like I'd had the idea, like I wanted probably starting maybe 2017, 2018. That's when I started listening myself to a lot of other podcasts. And I think every podcast listener kind of goes through this journey where they're like, I could do that, you know? So I'd had this in my mind, like I could start a podcast. Now, starting a podcast becomes a very humbling experience because yes, everybody can do it, but the reality is all of us, except for like 1%, really suck at it. And nobody wants to listen. So everybody will give you a courtesy listen just because they're your friend when you first start out. And then they quit listening if you suck. And the
Mm.
reality is, we did that. We went through a period of time where we just sucked and then got better. And
Yeah.
and so a lot of people just kind of forget about the days when we were terrible, but there was a long period of time. You could even argue now we're still terrible, but we're better than we used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's always fun to see how it's evolved over the years. And for what it's worth, I still appreciate it. Still look forward to those episodes. And I know we got several more to come out. I think this is the last section here, actually. Um,
Yeah, we're gonna do
what?
some the what am I reading?
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
What are
let me
you
pull up the
reading?
let me pull up the first article. The
Yeah.
first one we've got is called "Does Higher Open Mindedness Reduce Susceptibility to Misinformation and Belief in Conspiracies?" One of the things I've wanted to talk about on the podcast for a while is just conspiracy theories. I think they're fascinating, but I think they freak out a lot of people. And so I know I either wait till Scott's on the podcast and want to talk about it, or just you're here, so you're just gonna have to deal with it, Chase. But a new paper from the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology talks about, can we, if you make people more open minded, can it reduce their susceptibility to misinformation and belief in conspiracy theories? And so they have
Hmm.
this scale called AOT, which is actively open minded thinking. And it's a well known concept characterized by the active avoidance and my side bias and overconfidence in one's conclusions. And what they found is, in this sample, relatively small, so 462 people in the first study and 464 in the second study, that AOT can show increased in pre-bunking, like an intervention to kind of reduce conspiracy beliefs, and that higher AOT actually translate to the better ability to discern true from false information and reducing the belief in conspiracy theories. So yeah,
Hmm.
I think you got a chance to kind of glance through this one, Chase. What do you think about this? The AOT reducing the belief in misinformation and conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I mean, first thing that stick out to me is I think we're in a world where there's so much information that we're consuming every single day. I mean, there was a statistic. I don't. I mean, what is 98% of statistics are all made up, but there, it's something in the realm of 1,000 notifications that we're getting like through our phone, whether we're scrolling through Facebook, whether we're scrolling through LinkedIn, whether it's a text message or an alarm. Like, there's so much information that we're consuming, whether we're reading it or it's being blared to us, that it really is difficult to discern, in my humble opinion. And so I thought the study was really, really fascinating on how it's trying to tackle and quantify that. But I also think it's really hard for people to change their mind and actually broaden their horizon right now. Um, that's just my take. Like, it, I can't get anyone to change their mind if they plant that flag. Uh,
You know, the funny thing to me about it, that was like an interesting part of this finding to me in the first place is, and maybe this is my side bias. I had assumed that the people who are most prone to conspiracy theories were actually already the open minded people, because they
hmm,
would be, oh, I'm going to consider not just normal beliefs, but what about all these abnormal beliefs? Like, I just assumed that an open minded person would be the person that was more prone to that. I don't know if they actually tackle that in this study or not, but showing that open mindedness training essentially is what can debunk conspiracy theories. I thought that was super interesting. The one, I think,
hmm.
shortcoming of this is every so often we actually find out that a conspiracy theory is true.
That
And
is
so
hard.
we try, and so what AOT looks like to me, if you're debunking or trying to prove to someone that if they believe in a conspiracy theory, um, that you're actually kind of like brainwashing them or gaslighting them.
Yeah,
And if the conspiracy theory is actually true, that this is actually much more malicious than it looks. But
yeah,
knowing that most, I would say most conspiracy theories probably are not true, or maybe they only have like a grain of truth in them and they're like
mm,
98% false. um, I think this is a very interesting study, especially in the
yeah,
moment that we live in, when there's so much like competing narratives for like what is the ground source of truth. We can't even agree. We all have like our own little bubbles. We can't even agree on
yeah,
what truth is. And so I think that this was very kind of timely in that respect.
yeah. Well, I think here's the real question: is Bigfoot real or not?
I don't know if that's a conspiracy theory. I think that's just for, guys who are nerds who want to go and hang out in the woods. Like they're going
Yeah,
to go find Bigfoot. Um,
yeah,
but, but anyway,
yeah,
let's do the next one.
yeah.
This was an interesting one. I don't know if it's. particularly insightful, but I think it says a lot about the moment that we're in, which is a professor at Virginia Tech, Christopher Wing, who actually reached out to me after I did a presentation earlier this year. I presented at a conference called IPAC, and I talked
Mm.
about a lot about like how job analysis and job architecture are changing. And I cited his research, this commentary in the IOP journal called "If It Looks Like a Worker and Quacks Like a Worker, Is It a Worker?" Initiating the development of a precise and robust definition of a worker. So we're over 100 years into the existence of like behavioral sciences and IO psychology, and we've been studying workers this whole time, and no one had ever defined what a worker is. And I
Hmm.
thought this was fascinating. And the impetus for why there was this need of determining what a worker is because so many people are now confused about what a worker is because of the introduction of generative AI. And
Yep.
so we're having to define now for the first time what was kind of self evident, that a human being is a worker. And now we're having to think like, is a gig worker a worker? Is a volunteer worker a worker? Is a caregiver a worker? Is a child laborer a
Yep.
worker? Is a non human animal a worker? Is a AI a worker? And all
Yep.
of these are different examples of what is a worker. And so I thought this was fascinating as a concept that we have to look into this. But what were your thoughts on this one, Chase?
Yeah, so I know Tesla's doing their robots, right? So are those robots going to be workers? And if so, how do will they be taxed? There was another
Well,
article
they
that I was
probably don't have
following.
income, so they probably can't get taxed. But yeah, like, are
Well,
they a
but
worker? Probably a
do you
robot.
tax the business, right? Like are they I don't know how that works. But then yeah, you have so many AI agents now as well that are performing tasks. Is that task work? Is that task taxable? I have no idea, but I think the tax implications of the definition of worker is what I'm most interested in.
That's actually a really good point. I remember this was probably almost a decade ago. I was talking to a lawyer about because this is when we thought driverless cars were just around the corner, and
Yeah,
actually they're just now starting to come out now. But
yeah,
it were very like 2015ish. It was very hot and heavy. Driverless cars, they're going to take over. There's going to be no more drivered cars anymore. And I remember asking a lawyer, I was like, what are they going to do about like speeding tickets? Because like there's a
yeah,
lot of municipalities that their main source of income in like these small towns is just speeding tickets. And so with driverless cars, presumably there's going to be no more speeding, and therefore there's going to be no more tickets written. What are they going to do? And the lawyer basically said, "Oh, they're just going to change the laws to make something else illegal so that they can tax that, because a speeding ticket is like an effective tax on the people who go through that town." And so I
yep,
wonder, to your point, if it becomes too pronounced that there's so many more workers, but they're non-human workers that are
hmm,
producing the productivity outputs for businesses. Well, one of the primary ways that our federal government, funds itself is through income taxes.
hmm,
And if nobody's receiving income because either robots and robots don't make money, I mean, I guess they could make money in certain circumstances, but let's leave that to the side
yeah,
for a second.
yeah,
If the tax revenue goes down too much, using that lawyer's kind of reasoning, well, they'll just find something new to tax. And so maybe it's like the percentage of your revenue that's made by non-human workers,
yeah,
a
exactly.
certain percentage of that has to go to, taxable revenue or something like that. I don't know, but that's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, Chase. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people smarter than I, but best ideas are revised ideas. I think that's how it's got to be. We'll see.
Yeah. All right, let's do the last one. Just because I had you here, and I think you were somewhat adjacently involved in this research. A
Yeah,
colleague of mine, Ron Hetrick, previous guest on the podcast, really all around amazing dude. He and I, and loosely myself, because it was mostly him, and I think you actually helped out on this one, wrote an article about the dangers in the diamond. And this is talking about how um, how using like cash research that the workforce is turning into more of a diamond shape, right? So that means that there's few workers at the top, there's a lot of workers in the middle, and then there's few workers at the bottom. And a lot of the few workers at the bottom is because there a lot of organizations just aren't hiring as many young people, but also because of demographic factors where baby boomers are retiring, but they're being replaced by Gen Z, and Gen Z is just a smaller numerical generation than the generations before them. And so the thought is this is like, what are the kind of the positives and the negatives of this kind of diamond shape in the workplace? So I'll pause there and just wanted to get kind of like, what are your thoughts on this? And I know you kind of look in this into your day-to-day job, Chase. What are some of the dangers in the diamond, and just how do demographics play a role on the workforce and its makeup?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are still shouting from the rooftops AI is going to eliminate the need for early career or entry level talent. I, uh, Part of me hopes that happens, just because I think there needs to be a shift in priorities, specifically in what people my age and younger are focused on. But the the way in which employers are currently hiring, they're really just seemingly recycling the same workforce. It's really really high turnover for that, 3 to 5 and 5+ years of experience in industry. Um, so dangers of hiring in the diamond, you got people that maybe aren't able to adapt to certain technology shifts as much. Maybe you have individuals that have prior work experience that is hard to shift into your industry as your industry is getting molded and shaped by hiring difficulty, by technology changes, or something else entirely. But I am most interested in seeing what happens with that younger demographic, people that are maybe even not. I am hoping not going into the college side of things. I'm really hoping we see an increase in trades and trade schools, and that we have electricians and we have welders and plumbers and framers and all of these construction guys, because I got 2 lots of land and I'd love to build on them, but I don't know if anyone has tried to build on any land, but it's so expensive, and it's just because there's not people with that same skill. I mean, it's hard to find a contractor that's under the age of 40, um, and it just seems
Yeah.
like no one wants to do it.
Let me talk about that younger part of the equation here really quick. This was an eye-opening piece of data in this article where it talks about the labor force participation rate of teenagers, so people that are age 16 to 19 years old, and it goes back from baby boomers to Gen X to millennials to Gen Z. And one of the things you see is, all the way up until about 2001, which is where the millennials enter the workforce, the labor force participation rate was roughly between 50 to 60% of young people worked a job while they were ages 16 to 19 years old. Then starting in about 2001, millennials it plummets, it falls off a cliff. And so by roughly 2012, only 35% of 16 to 19 year olds are working in a job. And it stayed relatively flat since then as Gen Z has entered the workforce. And what's interesting to me about that, and what frankly I don't think many people are talking about, because it's all like, can people with college degrees get hired? Do you need a high school education? Do people have the skills of the future? One thing that's missing from the equation, and why the bottom of that diamond is really struggling, is most people want to hire people who have some work experience. It doesn't even necessarily
Yeah.
need to be applicable.
Mhm.
And so if you graduate college and you want to get your first job, and that's literally going to be the first job you've ever held. You've never been a student worker, you've never worked at McDonald's, you never babysat, you never, worked in your dad's construction yard, what have you.
Yeah.
If you've never done that, it, it's a huge gap for employers, because frankly, you're just weird and you don't know how to work. And I know nobody ever says this. Like, if
Yeah.
it's your very first job, you really don't know how to work. You've never been in any kind of environment. And I mean, by the time I graduated graduate school, I think I counted at one point, I had like 12 jobs before then. Like, I had
Yeah.
done so many things. And it just makes you a more kind of well adjusted, well rounded human being and more employable. And so I think that the real travesty of what's going on is just fewer young people are getting any experience working at a concession stand,
Yeah.
work like just doing the kind of the basic jobs that teenagers used to do. And I think that's making them less employable and frankly less well-rounded human beings. I don't want to blame them necessarily, but I think that is an outcome of what happens when young people quit working.
Yeah.
And so I think that that this is an understudied area that frankly that we should be spending more time on as a society, of like, how do we get more people to understand the value of work?
I agree. And with the younger generation, I think everyone should spend a year in a customer service job, just
Oh yeah,
because it'll make you a better human. It really
get beat
will. Like,
down.
yeah, you'll get beat down. You'll learn to fail. You'll learn to handle criticism, and maybe, who knows, maybe a coffee or two thrown at you along the way. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think that would be good for society at large.
awesome. Well, I think that's a good point to wrap on, Chase. I really want to say thank you for doing this. I know I give
Mhm.
you a hard time sometimes. I do think the world of you. I think you're one of the smartest people I've worked with. You always ask really great questions. You're very talented. I want to say that publicly so the world could hear it, because I just think that you're amazing. Um, but any final words before we wrap up?
I really appreciate being here, and excited to get back to work. I'm actually on vacation now, so I come back on Monday, which is going to be exciting.
Well, thanks for doing this while you're off, man. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, the People Analytics podcast. No guest today, AMA episode. Chayce Kowalski, thanks for being here.
Thanks.